to notify police of the heinous environment that he discovered in Jeffrey Dahmer's Milwaukee apartment. Brian, let's see this tape. Here once again is another look at the story that has riveted America. Jeffrey Dahmer might have been described as a quiet man who worked in a chocolate factory. That was last summer. Now he's known as what may be one of the world's most brutal serial killers ever. He's confessed to committing 17 particularly heinous murders, some of them crimes, some of which were crimes that included dismemberment of his victims, and cannibalism was also a part of his method of operation. Dahmer might still be free man today if it were not for the good fortune of Tracy Edwards. Where'd you meet Mr. Dahmer, Tracy?
At a mall on Milwaukee Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee.
Did he make a gay approach to you?
No, he did not.
Did he think you were gay?
I don't think so. I don't see how, you know.
What did he say? Let's drink some beer?
Yeah, go pick up some girls, you know. We can all hang out together. You know?
Oh, I see. So he presented himself as heterosexual.
Right.
And shortly after that, then you went back to his apartment?
First, we went to the liquor store, you know, up on Wisconsin Avenue, and then we caught a cab up to his apartment. Yep.
To his apartment?
Yeah, well, first I was going home to change, but my brother's sister wasn't at home, so he was outside waiting, said we could go over to his apartment and drink a beer or whatever, you know, and wait till she get home. So I thought it was cool, you know, he seemed like an all right guy. You know?
Right. So you went to his apartment?
Right.
Did you detect an odor when you got to his door?
It was like all over the apartment building complex, not just his apartment, like all over, you know. Yeah.
So all the neighbors would have been able to...
Oh, I'm sure I heard recently that they did smell it for about a year or so, or whatever. Yeah, he told me it was a sewage problem or whatever, you know.
We stopped at his apartment because he said he was a photographer.
Right.
I went up to his place right away, and I noticed the smell as soon as he opened the hallway. This is what you told our producer.
Right.
He said it was a sewer problem.
Right.
You believed him. He had 8 locks on the front door.
Right.
What'd you notice when you walked in?
Well, first of all, it was like pretty nice, decent apartment, you know.
Was otherwise well kept, huh?
Right. Just some boxes of neurotic acid sitting in the front living room. Besides that, you know. Yeah, he told me he cleaned bricks with the neurotic acid or whatever, and I'd done that before too, you know.
Did you notice a camera?
Yeah, surveillance camera. He said that would stop people from breaking in or whatever.
It was on the wall?
Right. Yeah, hanging up in the corner.
And you had a little rum and Coke?
Right. Yeah. First he brought me a beer, then he gave me the rum and Coke or whatever.
Well, what time of day was this, Tracy?
About 6 p.m.
What time?
6 p.m.
And he said, you feeling pretty good? Or he made an inquiry about whether he had a buzz, I guess.
Right. That was kind of strange, but I didn't think nothing, you know. Yeah. Cause
there were bodybuilder type photos on the wall?
Yeah, yeah. He said he worked out at Vic Tanny. He was off into athletics or whatever.
All of a sudden then, Tracy, he did what? You were leaning over, it says.
Right. We were discussing. I was leaning over forward, drinking the rum and Coke, right? I had my arm on my leg, right? And then he threw the handcuff on my arm and threw the machete up under my heart, like, you know. Right.
Put a handcuff on your left wrist.
Right.
And thrust a machete under your armpit.
Right.
With the blade under the armpit?
Right.
What did he say when he did this?
He told me, yup, he'd done this before. He enjoyed doing it. He'll kill me if I didn't do what he said, dude.
What is it that he wanted you to do?
Right. Pose for him or whatever.
Take pictures. Okay, and then did he guide you to the refrigerator?
Shortly after that, after he talked to me, you know. Yeah, he kind of talked and told me what he was, you know, what he wanted me to do. Then he told me to go get a beer out the refrigerator or whatever.
You went to the refrigerator?
Right.
And you opened?
Right.
And what do you remember you seeing?
Skulls, hearts, you know, things of that nature.
Did you get sick then at this time? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want you to tell me what happened then.
I was more like in shock, more of that than sick, you know. I was feeling sick at first anyway. I guess that's from the drink or whatever. Yeah. It's like at that point I had an out-of-body experience, you know, like God just came through me or whatever.
Okay. Did he show you pictures?
Right.
And the pictures were of corpses?
Right.
In some of which were dismembered, is that right?
Right, in which he had eaten off of them or whatever.
Did he say he was Did he say he engaged in cannibalistic behavior? Did he say that, or are you...
Yeah, he told me that.
Then he has you lay on the floor face down, huh?
Right. Well, he wanted me to go face down. I wouldn't do that, though.
Mm-hmm. And he showed you a barrel.
Right.
Inside of which there were body parts.
Right.
Was The Exorcist playing on the TV?
Right.
Was a videotape?
Of The Exorcist, yeah.
Do you remember him putting the tape in, or was it in when you...
As soon as we came in, he went to the back where I had a seat in the front living room. So I guess he was putting it on then or whatever, I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In any event, The Exorcist was playing.
Right.
Well, you don't have to give us more detail than we need here, but sooner or later, what'd you do? Did you hit him?
Yeah, when I was escaping, you know. At first, we went through a lot of different changes. He was going through different emotions, you know, telling me how beautiful I was. He didn't want me to leave him and different things like that, you know.
Sexual commentary.
Then he started acting like that, you know.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And did you say, I want to get out of here, or what?
Yep, I asked God, why am I here, you know, right?
You asked God that.
Right. You know.
He was rocking in a trance?
Doing transcendent states, you know, that for a moment looking at The Exorcist, you know, and telling me different things, how good it was, and things of that nature, you know.
Okay, so just what then, at what point did you decide you were going to make your break?
That's after, like, he laid across me. He said he wanted to listen to my heartbeat or whatever. Yeah, and then at that point, he told me he was going to cut my heart out and eat it. Right. And then I decided, you know, I had to use the bathroom. I made up an excuse to go to the bathroom or whatever. And then I told him, let's go in the front living room. He had an air conditioner in the front living room, right? And in the back room where he led me to the bedroom, it was like hot in there. So he walks me, he guides me like back to the front living room, and we sit there then, and then he starts chanting different things, you know.
Chanting?
Yes, yeah.
Were they intelligible chants?
No, some type of, I guess you could say a ritual chant or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so now you're going to break.
Yeah, I was either going to go out the window or the door.
You still have the handcuff on your...
One.
On the left wrist?
I would never let him get the other handcuff on me.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you do?
Right. After he just started rocking there, I got up and I told him I had to use the bathroom again. I told him I was drinking too much beer. He was so much in a transcendent state, he didn't listen to me. So I got up, and when I stood to my feet, I hit him and kicked him, you know.
Did he go down?
No, he kind of swayed over to the side. And as I was going towards the door, I didn't know which of the 8 locks was locked. But God just directed me to the right lock, you know.
You believe God directed you?
God had me. That's the whole purpose why I'm here now. Yeah.
You think you hit the right lock first?
Automatically, without even knowing which one was
You went and unlocked one lock out of 8, and it was the
8, and it was the
and it opened
lock.
the door.
That's correct.
And you ran out of the apartment building.
That's right.
When you got to the front, did he chase you?
He chased me to the door. He swung the knife at my head area. I turned around and punched him in the groin area. Yeah.
And now the door's open and you flee.
Right, and he's still grabbing my arm, like trying to pull me back. You know.
Uh-huh. Now you exit the apartment complex.
Right.
And you run out onto, is this 25th Street?
25th and Kilbourne.
You run out into the street. It's what time now?
It's almost 12 midnight. Right.
You spent 5 hours, 6 hours in this apartment?
Talking with this person. Yeah.
And what'd you see when you got to the street corner?
Well, I kind of like chased the cop car down the street. I asked the officers there.
You mean there was a cop car just coming by?
Perfect timing. Happened to be coming by, so I stopped them. And I asked them, I said, is the guy up here trying to kill me, you know? And then they look at me and say, what do you want of us? You escape from us or something, you know? Really. But that case is pending. I'd rather turn that over to my attorney, what happened after then. Yeah. I would.
You mean the Tupelo charge comes up right there with the cops in the car?
No.
Yeah, I'm Tracy Edwards' attorney, S.H. Salat. And what happened, the Tupelo charge not come up to sometime later.
Let's.
But we want to stick to the way the Milwaukee Police Department treated Mr. Edwards up on escaping from this mass murderer. He sought their aid. He sought the service that each law enforcement agency in this
Is
nation
obliged to provide its citizenry. We understand
to
that.
protect and serve every
Yeah.
citizen.
Well, I'll tell you what, the city of Milwaukee, if they never hear the name of Jeff Dahmer again, it'll be too soon. And my goodness, has not the police department in Milwaukee been under the microscope of public scrutiny and opinion? This audience probably already knows that charges of racism and homophobia have been leveled against the Milwaukee Police Department. Mr. Edwards' lawyer is just one of many who are foursquare believing that if Mr. Edwards were white and if it had, there would have been more immediate attention given. Let the record show, however, that whatever may have been the delay in taking Mr. Edwards seriously, they finally did.
Yes.
And did you accompany the police then back to the apartment?
Right. Well, me and one officer kind of walked around there. He stayed downstairs while he told me to go upstairs and tell the guy to take the handcuff off.
He what?
He told me to go upstairs and tell the guy to take the handcuffs off.
So you went back to the apartment alone?
Right.
Unassisted.
Unassisted.
Unassisted, he was
And when you
directed.
got to the door, what happened?
He tells me to come in, he'll take it off.
And what'd you do?
I ran again, right? I left, and then the officer finally came upstairs with me, you know. They wouldn't give me a chance to talk or anything. I couldn't tell them anything, what was going on in the apartment, you know, what I have seen or anything. They wouldn't listen to me, you know.
Were the officers white or black or both?
They were white.
They were white. Now, the officers finally then go up to the apartment.
Right.
And they obviously detect the odor immediately.
Right. I guess they thought it was the acid, you know. They wouldn't even let me tell them what I had saw or anything, you know.
They walk in the apartment.
Right.
They see Dahmer inebriated.
Right. And then he asked all cops what's going on or whatever, you know. Is there a problem or something like that, you know.
They see a Polaroid camera on the bed.
Right.
And I assume they open the refrigerator door.
Yeah. And one cop threw up then when he opened the refrigerator door. Right.
So finally, Jeffrey Dahmer
They
is
took
arrested.
me seriously. Right.
Now, let me just establish here before we move on, and there's so much... let me tell you who's here. Brian, we'll go from left to right. Next to Mr. Edwards is Nick, who was a former boyfriend of Jeffrey Dahmer. They met in a gay bar and dated for about 2 to 3 months in 1985. Nick will tell you that Jeffrey Dahmer was a jealous partner. But beyond that, detected nothing that would have led him to believe that Mr. Dahmer would be capable of this kind of behavior. For Carolyn Smith, all of the light on the Dahmer tragedy comes too late. Her brother Eddie disappeared in June of 1990. He went to a gay pride parade in Chicago and never came home. Yes, he was one of Dahmer's victims. Shirley Hughes is with us. Her son Tony was killed by Jeffrey Dahmer. He would have been 32 years old last month. Also here is Rick Cohn. Rick is a 17-year-old high school senior from Union Grove, Wisconsin. In 1986, Rick, you were 12 years old, right?
Yes.
You saw Jeffrey Dahmer masturbating in a park in Milwaukee. You encouraged now you're 12 at the time, and you're with a buddy, right?
Yeah, I was with a friend named John.
You encouraged an old lady, an old and a senior citizen, to
Old
call the
lady.
cops.
Mhm.
She did. The cops came. They couldn't find him.
Yeah,
You go back to the area where he was, and he starts chasing you.
this is correct.
Finally, the cops get him.
Yeah, they did. I was surprised because the cops actually went into the parkway to look for him, which normally no one will because it's so hard to find people or anyone in that parkway.
Finally, they get him, and as he's being hauled away in the paddy wagon, does he shout at you?
Yes, he threatened to come back and kill us, but we didn't believe him at the time because figured it was an empty threat. No, but
You-
we mocked him because we came out to a bridge and we seen him down there and we mocked him, you know, teased him because he had his pants down and was ejaculating. So we teased him because I knew by the time he got his pants up, we'd be gone because we had our bikes and he never had a chance to
So
catch
you're
us.
kind of smart aleck 12-year-old yourself.
Yeah.
After having been arrested for the behavior that young Rick Cohn describes, Jeffrey Dahmer was charged with lewd and lascivious behavior, convicted of disorderly conduct, and sentenced to 1 year probation. Pat Snyder's a friend and former neighbor of the Dahmer family. Has known Jeff since he was in high school. You knew him in Ohio?
Yes.
And also here is Tim Cooperson. He's been covering the story for the Milwaukee Journal. How has media treated the Jeffrey Dahmer story? What's true, what isn't? How well sourced have been all of the copy that you may have read about this, one of the most brutal and talked about serial murder cases in the history of American criminology? And we'll be back in just a moment. Several days before the incident involving Tracy Edwards in the Dahmer apartment, the police are notified by two women who happen to be black. Not an unimportant fact, given the charges that have flown after the Dahmer case was finally blown wide open. See a kid running naked in the alleyway behind the Dahmer apartment. The kid is a early teen age, 14, naked and Laotian, and not at all English skilled, bleeding from the lower body. The cops return the kid to Dahmer's apartment after he explains very apparently calmly to the cops that they're gay lovers and they had a spat. Here is the recorded transcription of the police officers who intervened that night, returning this kid to the Dahmer apartment. Incidentally, this teenager's body was found in the apartment later on. Here are the cops who handled that incident talking to the dispatcher in Milwaukee.
36. The intoxicated Asian naked male was returned to his sober boyfriend, and we're tonight, she 18 or she 10. 50 North 33. Hey, for a minute. For be a minute. My partner's going to get deloused at the station.
Now, the women who came upon this young man in crisis have taken this thing very seriously. So they, like good citizens ought to, call the cops to say, what happened? What happened? And it is not facile to say. We're patted on the head and said, don't worry, lady, everything's fine. Here's a recording of the conversation between the woman who notified the cops about the naked boy and her conversation with dispatch.
How old was the child?
It wasn't a child, it was an adult.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Are you positive? Because this child doesn't even speak English. My daughter had, dealt with him before, seen him on the street, kissing this one.
Yeah, no, it's all taken care of, ma'am.
Are you sure?
Ma'am, I can't make it any more clear. It's all taken care of. That's, he's with his boyfriend in his boyfriend's apartment where he's got his belongings also.
That was several days before the incident described by Tracy Edwards. You should know that Jeffrey Dahmer has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 13 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. That's a technicality that has to do with dates and when the murders happened before the laws, before the nomenclature was changed. It is possible that he could get life on any one or all of these counts. This means life without parole. The trial for Jeffrey Dahmer is set for January 27th, 1992. The pre-trial motions are set for January 13th, 1992. Bail was originally set at $1 million. It's now at $5 million since the number of murders has increased. Nick. You're an out-of-the-closet gay male, and you met Dahmer in a gay bar, and you dated for 2 to 3 months in 1985. So?
I don't believe it, but I do.
What do you mean? You're surprised about it?
I didn't know it was him until I didn't even remember his name. It was so long ago, and I didn't realize it until I saw his picture, and that's when everything snapped to me.
Oh. And you recall what about Jeffrey Dahmer from close up, socially, his behavior, what he talked about, etc.?
A person that you would meet and not remember, a person that never made a mark, really jealous, and basically introverted. Not aggressive at all.
You know, we have now the research showing that he killed dogs and hung a dog's head on a pole when he was a child.
I don't think that, personally, for everything that has been coming together with everybody's stories and coming out, when I was a child, we used to catch fish and drag them behind our bikes with string. So
you're wondering why that's...
I don't see it relevant.
Well, you're not here to suggest that they've got the wrong guy, are you?
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
And as you now retroactively consider Jeffrey Dahmer, a man you had known socially, and this is a long time ago, 6 years ago.
Correct.
I guess you're saying to yourself, well, I guess it's possible. Is that it? Do I understand your position?
No, I absolutely am with it now because there's reasons, and now...
You're beginning to see...
Right, everything's coming together. My conception of everything isn't just, you know, everybody has their own, you know, things have happened to them involving him. I know that when I was with Jeff, I met him in a nightclub situation. We saw each other for an extended period of time. He saw no one else.
Yeah.
We did not live together.
Yeah.
We did not spend the night together. There's a lot of peculiarities that didn't go with it.
You did have sex together.
Yes, we did.
And he would leave the apartment. He would not stay, or he wouldn't sleep. In other words, you were alone in the morning.
In the evening. But it wasn't like it was an exclusive situation, but I couldn't understand it as him being so jealous for him to not want to stay.
If you talked to a waiter, he became upset.
There was a lot of times in public that, yes, very, very, very possessive.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was for a reason that in the relationship, asking certain things but to not draw it on, I asked him where his first sexual experience was. His first sexual experience was with his father.
He said to you?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right, this is without proof. We should say that. I mean, if we're going to be responsible at all, we should...
That's true, but I see it
any lawyer anywhere would remind the jury that this is hearsay. Oh, that's all right. I thank you for your contribution here. And he would then depart. He'd get up and leave after the intimacy. He would leave immediately, huh?
Mm-hmm. Like he had somewhere to go or something to do.
But you never thought of him as weird.
No, it was not if it's not acceptably normal, but in the normal sense of that lifestyle, it was normal.
Right. There also is a feeling that he may have been a homophobic gay person.
He wasn't. He was, Phil, he was an active member in the gay community in Milwaukee.
He was?
Yes. He went to the bars.
Well, that's not political action.
No, I said he was active. He was a
socially active gay person.
He was an out homosexual in the gay bars.
And we'll be back in a moment. Carolyn Smith's brother, Eddie, disappeared, as I told you, in June of 1990, having never returned from a gay pride parade that he visited in Chicago. Did you get a phone call from this guy?
In March of this year, I believe it was.
You had, of course, the cops have been notified and everyone, the alert was out?
They told me to come down and fill out a report, in which me and my sister did.
This is the likeness of your brother you wear on your lapel.
Yeah.
Incidentally, all of Dahmer's victims were black, is that so?
No.
Or
No.
of color?
No, his first victim was white.
And the rest?
There were some, there were blacks, there was the Laotian boy, and there were 2 American Indians.
Stephen Hicks, his first victim was white.
That would have been Bath, Ohio.
78.
When he was in high school.
Just graduated.
Just after he graduated.
Carolyn, The phone rings, and what do you hear?
I hear a Caucasian man on the phone, and I was sitting there at home cutting out coupons like I usually do. And I just happened to pick up the phone. Usually I hit my speakerphone. And I heard this voice say, "Don't bother looking for your brother." And I says, "Why not?" And he said, "Because he's dead." And I says, "Well, how do you know he's dead?" And he said, "Because I killed him." And then my mind kind of draws a blank, and I called the police, and they told me to come down and fill out a report. So me and my sister, we go down to the police station, and I inform them that we filled out a report in July of last year, a missing persons report. And they said, "We have none on file." And they said they'll give this report to the homicide department. So a detective from homicide called at 1 in the morning and came over and interviewed me and my ex-boyfriend. And he said, "We're going to treat this as a homicide, and we can't tell, if we find him, we can't tell you where he is, but we'll just tell you he's all right." And every once in a while they come and brief us on what's been going on. And
Excuse me, Carolyn, when was the phone call?
in March, I believe, of this year.
So this would have been at least 3 or 4 months before the
Right.
arrest.
Right.
Have your now even after the arrest of Dahmer, your brother's
Right.
is not included in the.
Right. When they had 11 bodies that they had to account for, it was just like a waiting period of horror, really. And
The minute you heard Dahmer,
the minute I heard Dahmer was from a friend of mine who said, "Did you hear about these killings in Milwaukee?" And I says, "Whoa, what killings?" And he said, "Someone's been killing homosexuals and everything." And he says, "I thought about your brother Eddie," because he knew Eddie had been missing for a long time. So I said, "No, you're crazy." So I got home at 8:30 that night, and Milwaukee police was on my answering service. And my heart just jumped out of my chest because I figured that's what they had to tell me. So I called them up, and they said that a TV station wanted to interview you about your brother. Well, I've been trying to get Eddie's picture on TV for many times, and I said, "Fine." So after that station, then a couple of more kept calling. So all that Wednesday, I had interviews with TV stations. And yeah, and so anyway, to make a long story short, on Saturday, when they had accounted for all 11 bodies, I said, we're in the clear. So that Monday following, the detective came over, and my brother Henry called me downstairs and said, "The detective wants to talk to you." And I figured they wanted more information about Eddie. And so that's when he told me that Jeffrey Dahmer had admitted to killing my brother.
you went to the apartment.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, Carolyn?
Because I just wanted to see if those were the last steps Eddie took.
It was a kind of, however painful, sort of like trying to get close to Eddie.
Yeah.
I assume it had been pretty much, everything had been removed by the cops by the time you got there.
Yeah.
You must have cried like a baby over that apartment.
Yeah.
And you pray that he didn't suffer.
Well, when the detective came and told me that Eddie was one of the victims, I just, you heard all kinds of things all that week, so you can kind of speculate what had happened. And I just said to him, did he cut him up like all the rest? And he said, "Well, at the time, you don't want to know right now." He said, "All I can tell you is that Eddie's death was the most gruesome of them all."
And you've had an opportunity then to recover the remains and have a
There was no remains.
So you haven't even had a burial then?
No, just a memorial service.
Mm-hmm. One other point, as grisly as it may be, neighbors heard the electric saw and thought he was building a bookcase. Another neighbor walked over, knocked on the door, and said, "Hey, it stinks in here," or words to that effect. And Dahmer quietly said how sorry he was. His freezer was broken. What took so long to capture Jeffrey Dahmer? And we'll be back in just a moment. Shirley Hughes is our next guest. Her son Tony was killed by Jeffrey Dahmer. He would have been 32 years old last month. Tony was deaf, and you assume he communicated with Dahmer by writing notes.
That's what he said, yes.
Oh, so you had conversation with your son after he had met Dahmer?
No.
Oh, Dahmer had said that he communicated.
Yes.
I see. Have you been allowed, however imperfect and small is this compensation, have you been allowed to bury your son's remains?
Yes.
So your son then was identified immediately after the cops finally
No.
Took a while?
Took dental records.
Dental records.
Yes, his dental. He was identified by his dental records.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are you doing with your anger, Miss Hughes?
Well, Phil, I'm not angry. It's not anger here. It's just, I just don't feel anger due to the help of the Lord and praying and prayer. I don't feel anger. I feel hurt because of the way he died, but I don't feel any anger towards anyone.
Was your son living in his own residence at the time he disappeared?
Yes, he was living in Madison, Wisconsin.
And he met at a gay club in Milwaukee.
Yes, that's what.
How do you know that?
That's where Jeffrey said he met him. But Jeffrey had been knowing my son ever since '89. I haven't met Jeffrey, but his deaf friend have written sworn statements to this effect that he had been knowing my son ever since '89.
Your son signed, I assume.
Yes.
Had some speech ability, but it...
Yes, you can understand some things he say.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Jeffrey has given rather specific information about his relationship with your son to the police following his arrest.
No, he just wanted to make believe that he met him that night at that bar. But his deaf friend has signed statements to the detective to that effect that he's been knowing Jeffrey and my son ever since '89, about 6 of his deaf friends.
I see. All right, Mrs. Hughes, please, I may ask you to just stand by for a moment. Rick, we'll get to you here. Let me talk to Pat Snyder. You're the Ohioan, Miss Snyder.
Yeah.
You're a friend and former neighbor of the Dahmer family. So?
Nothing, first I want to say that nothing can ever be said or done, and I'm not here to excuse anything that Jeffrey did. But Jeffrey didn't do this alone, and I have always thought from the beginning, I'm not saying that someone else helped him to drag the bodies. I'm saying that something else instigated, something else motivated this kind of anger. And I have finally, as we sit here, the police in Bath, Ohio, my husband had called me twice this afternoon to tell me that they want to talk to me.
They found body fragments in Bath in Jeffrey's backyard.
That was a long time ago.
Yes, it is, but I just wanted to reestablish that.
I told them the same thing, that I didn't think he acted alone.
You think Jeffrey was an abused child?
I know Jeffrey was an abused child.
Was Jeffrey not left alone as a senior in high school?
Yes, he was left alone.
So his stepmother and his father divorced?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Mother and father divorced.
His mother and father divorced, and but his mother was a non-functional mother. She had psychological problems, and as witness to that, she is in seclusion.
Right.
Where is his mother? She's in seclusion.
Right. But his mother and father divorced at what age?
18.
He was 18.
18.
And they left, they split.
They went to Wisconsin, did they not?
Right.
And took the other sibling.
The younger son.
The younger son, leaving Jeffrey alone.
After graduation, his summer after graduation from high school.
He lived alone.
Lionel didn't go to Wisconsin. Lionel worked in Akron and Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And he had too good a job to leave it.
The mother went to Wisconsin.
Right.
The mother went.
Here is the only look the public has had at Lionel, Jeffrey Dahmer's father. Shook, to be sure, when he talked to Inside Edition.
Acting, to be sure.
Here it is.
I did not believe he was that sick. However, I still loved him and that I supported him. He's my first son. It's very sad. See, when I dissociate myself from this, I can do okay, but when I let myself go, I can't. I just could hardly believe it, that he could have done it at that early of an age. It's unbelievable. I didn't think he was capable of doing that to a human being.
Tim Cupressin is the reporter from the Milwaukee Journal with whom we'll speak in just a moment. The authorities removing the grisly evidence in the Jeffrey Dahmer apartment. Tim Cupressin of the Milwaukee Journal. All right. Now fill us in here. You were there immediately after, or shortly after the arrest?
I was there in the morning, about 7 o'clock, when the investigation was still going on. And at that point, the scene was still pretty open. There were no police lines up. The apartment door was open. We were able to look inside the apartment door. The grisly evidence was gone, but there was still a lot of signs of Dahmer's existence.
Right. Now, you've given your professional energies to this story exclusively. At least, maybe now you're going to go back to cover some City Hall stuff, but the Journal obviously had to commit an awful lot of manpower and womanpower to this story. Now, come on, you know, in the brief time, I'm sorry to do this to you, Timmy, what should we know? I mean, what is the research and the journalistic hard work tell us about this young man's background? What's coming together here in terms of the profile?
Well, the thing is Dahmer fell through the cracks of the system in a number of instances. He was convicted of sexually assaulting the brother of the 14-year-old Laotian boy.
The Laotian kid who was later found dead.
Two years earlier.
This is very important.
And his father, after he was given, he served less than a year in the House of Corrections, was given probation. His father had written a letter to the judge saying, alcohol is my son's problem, he needs help, and there's evidence that alcohol, when he was drunk, he would get violent.
And we have in People magazine a picture of him passed out in the Army.
That's correct.
From which he was discharged early.
For drinking.
Compulsive drinker. He'd get up, martinis or whatever it might be.
He apparently had a full bar in his footlocker at the foot of his bed.
So this is quite literally a man who is desperately interested in removing his mind from reality. Okay, so he's arrested for a sexual molestation of, would it be a minor then?
Yes, he was, the brother I think was 13 at the time.
Serious charge.
Yes.
He gets a year, but he's allowed to work.
Right, he has work release privileges. He worked
So he sleeps at the jail, so to speak, for lack of a better word. He works.
Right.
He has a social caseworker, whatever you call it.
He had a probation officer.
Probation officer, a woman.
That's correct.
She's overworked.
100 cases or something.
100, yeah. Normal procedure would have her visit his home.
Under the best of circumstances, yes.
Which could have stopped this then.
Perhaps.
Odor, refrigerator. What probation officer isn't gonna wonder? So he sees her in her office.
That's correct.
So for all we know, there were murders taking place while he was seeing her.
Well, there were, and there's evidence of visits. There are records of Dahmer appearing at the probation officer looking disheveled and tired and not having sleep, and we know by the dates that the night before, 2 nights earlier, he had killed.
Right. Do we know anything about abuse as a child?
There are reports of abuse, physical abuse. There's not any confirmed reports of sexual abuse.
Phil, if I can just real quick, it wasn't a molestation. It went on until he was 16 years old with his father.
Yeah, that is your statement, and it is on the record.
There's no evidence of that other than
very good.
Than his
I
statement.
assume we've got a lot of heavyweight journalists out there preparing books and so on. I don't know.
I understand there's about 8 books in the works.
8. And we'll be back in just a moment. I should try to clarify Pat Snyder's observation that she thinks that Dahmer had an accomplice. Pat, please forgive me. I don't like to disagree with guests in public, but you have no proof of that. Your observation is, as I understand it, rejected by reporter Cupressin from the Journal.
There's no evidence of any accomplice at this point.
So I don't want to confuse or make worse a story that's already complicated, and this is the very time when we want media to be conservative and responsible. Hi.
Hi. Tracy, you stated that you You believe that God was on your side, right?
Yes.
Correct.
I believe that also.
Thank you.
Because he had to have...
Yes. I love the applause, but we're ticking away here. Yes.
I would just love to ask Shirley, do you have other kids?
Yes.
I would just advise you to tell them if they go out, just say, get behind the seat, I don't need you.
And tell them, watch them who they hang out with. Yes.
I was wondering what type of punishment the police are receiving regarding the
Very good question. Tim.
2 police officers were fired. The third, who was young, inexperienced, is fired, but the firing is held. He's on a year's probation.
Yeah.
They're appealing.
Let's go.
I have a question to the 2 people who lost relatives, and that would be, what do you think their just punishment should be for Dahmer?
Well,
Whatever justice system.
Me, myself, I really don't know what Dahmer should get. I know that when we have to go in front of him and I sit there and look at him, I get mad and want to do things to him, like break my nails off in his neck. But I can't do that thing because they treat us like we've killed 15 people and search us like we've killed 15 people. Yes. And they cater to him.
Yes. So the lady who lost her brother, are you hoping of ever finding your brother's remains and having a burial?
There's a lot about my brother that they haven't told us, so I don't know what they have on them.
And we'll be back in just a moment. One more item in an already complicated story. Tracy Edwards, the man from whom we heard at the beginning of our program, who would have been the next victim of Jeffrey Dahmer had he not run out to encourage the police to go to the apartment, is himself under indictment in Tupelo, Mississippi for sexual battery, accused of sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. You should also know that Mr. Edwards' charges of capital rape were dropped by the grand jury. This alleged crime is to be adjudicated in the Tupelo courts, and I assume Mr. Salat will be his attorney.
That's correct.
And I should also tell you that Tracy Edwards, through his attorney, Mr. Salat, is suing the city of Milwaukee for negligence in the cavalier, as it might be said, manner that they allege he was treated by the Milwaukee police. Mr. Q. Prisson, sir, how is the city of Milwaukee doing on the... What did you want to say?
Well, first I want to say that a reporter of ours, Joel Dresang, spoke with Mr. Edwards 2 days after the Dahmer case broke, and Mr. Edwards said that he commended the Milwaukee police, specifically Officer Roth, who he said did a wonderful job. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, and not handling
only arresting that mass cannibal murder Jeffrey Dahmer.
I just wanted to get that on the record, that he commended the police. He was
not commending them for the treatment and indignation that was shown to him by those 2 officers at first.
Your comment is on the record. How is Milwaukee doing emotionally with very little time left?
A double shock. You've got the mass murder, and then you've got the crisis with the police department. Police officers apparently not doing what we think police officers ought to do.
They need to pay.
Milwaukee will survive. A great city indeed. We do apologize for once again giving treatment